Hello everyone, this is Money Mom. Welcome to the channel. How did I get so fat to begin with? Let's get started and talk about it. Have to go back to the beginning. This is me, Money Mom, when I was a year old. As you can tell, I was a chunk-a-lunk. I was well-fed and happy. So I don't know if any of you have one of these kind of pictures with these bronze shoes, but that's kind of what they did back then. But I was a happy baby that loved her cereal. My mom always said, oh, our little Donnie has such a good appetite and she loves her cereal. So I loved eating from day one, and I was never a picky eater. Put anything in front of me and I would eat it. I would even eat raw potatoes when my mom would peel them, and I would dip them in salt and eat them. I don't know if any of you did that, but I just have always loved eating. But back in the 70s, my parents always portioned everything out. For example, for breakfast, you didn't get a whole banana, you got half of a banana. We actually ate legitimate portions. And so I never was satisfied with those portions. In the 70s, a lot of it was all about the carbs. For example, we had cereal for breakfast. Remember those little miniature boxes of cereal that they had? Well, that would be a serving, and it would be like Special K or something like that. That filled me up for half a second. Maybe a piece of toast and maybe a half a banana and a little teeny cup of orange juice. Remember, everything was portioned. I felt like every time I ate, I remember thinking, even as a little girl, I can't wait till my next meal. Now, I had plenty of food. My parents always made sure that I was well fed, and I had vegetables and fruits and everything, but for whatever reason, I was always hungry. And if I would start my day eating something like that, those small portions actually made me more hungry. Then for lunch, we might have cottage cheese and fruit or some soup, and then, or we might have like a sandwich. And then if we were allowed to have chips, then we were allowed, Old Dutch, I think was the brand. We could have a couple, like maybe 6 chips, maybe a half an apple, things like that. So you get the idea. Since I'm from Minnesota, the casserole and hot dish capital of the world, I grew up having goulashes, hot dishes, everything pasta with a little bit of meat, and I just remember never feeling full. That's how I remember growing up. Then I started to gain weight at about age 13. Now, mind you, I was considered super chunky, but when I look back at my pictures, I really wasn't that big. I'm going to try to find some so I can show you guys some pictures so you can see what I look like. I was a little overweight. I was 5'3½". I weighed 138 pounds. I wore a size 11 in junior. And I remember my mom saying, Dawn, you're going to need to lose some weight and get down to about 120, because if you don't, you're going to have to wear women's sizes, or we're going to have to go over to Montgomery Ward and buy you clothes, because we're at Sears, you've got choices of 3, 5, 7, and 9, and there's only a couple 11s. You cannot get any bigger. So she put me on a calorie restrictive diet. This is late 70s. And I remember everything was low fat or no fat. And it was calorie restricted, and everything was counted out. Everything was portioned. Dry tuna is an example. We weren't allowed to have starches like potato and corn. You know, if you had salad, it was basically no dressing on it, okay, because you couldn't have anything like that. Basically tasteless food without any butter or much seasoning at all. I just remember that, and I remember always being hungry. I remember in the 80s when my mom would buy these figurine and Slender bars, and that was my lunch with an apple. Well, those things were basically like eating a candy bar, and I became more hungry after I ate it. Now, what's interesting is I remember a few times when we could go out to eat. It was only a special occasion. Remember, going out to eat back then, at least for us, was something very special. We very rarely did it. But we would go out to breakfast occasionally when we were traveling, and I would have a huge breakfast. Whether it was a pancake, I might have some eggs, hash browns, everything. And I would eat that whole thing, and I felt really full. And what's interesting is I would be full the entire day. I didn't have to think about food. I actually myself would be better if I ate a large amount of food at once rather than these little teeny grazing things, because it just makes me more hangry. And another thing is, when my dad would fix eggs at home, I felt more full and more satisfied. And I just noticed some of these things. But I think part of the reason I became so very overweight was because everything was all about carbs and low fat, and I never felt satisfied. I do also remember on holiday meals such as Thanksgiving and things, I would eat a large amount of food and then I wouldn't be hungry for hours. So that's kind of how I became overweight. I'm learning as I go along what works best for me. Every one of us is different. I want to hear from you guys. Did any of you struggle with your weight when you were a kid? I'd love to hear your story. That's all I have to say for now. I love you, I appreciate you, and I sure hope to see you on tomorrow morning's video. Bye-bye.